Our next guests are here with an announcement in the sector, making a big bet on content. OZY co-founder and CEO Carlos Watson's here. Also, Marc Lasry, co-founder and CEO of Avenue Capital Group. Milwaukee Boat. I mean, we can go through all of your so what's happening here? You guys are doing a big deal today.
We are.
You want to tell us about it?
A lot of excitement. We're announcing a fairly big fundraise. There's so much excitement in media right now. Carrie, you were obviously talking about Apple TV getting going, HBO Max, Spotify talked about podcasts this week. And so along comes young OZY Media saying we think we can serve millennials in a good way. We're raising $35 million as part of our Series C to let us bring more TV shows, more podcasts, more festivals.
From some big deal people.
Big deal people, starting with Marc Lasry.
And who else?
Lots of good folks. The folks at Interlock, the folks at Liontree, you know well. And then good support from our existing investors. So Laureen Powell-Jobs and the folks at Emerson Collective have been great. Axel Springer, who's obviously really active in the sector, and GSV Capital.
Okay, so here's my big question. And Kara, I want you to weigh in on this. So digital media has been a tough business, like a really tough business, especially when it comes to valuation, because you've seen what happened with BuzzFeed go up, and then it's come down. We can talk about Vox. It's gone up, and it's come down. You're the big investor investing in this guy right now. What are you thinking about these? What do you think? How are you feeling about valuations in the digital media space? He's also doing events and so many other things.
Look, I think at the end of the day, to do well in this space, you need to have a CEO who's got a vision, who's going to be able to do it. I think you also need a forced personality. I think the more time people spend with Carlos, the more impressed you're going to be. And there are going to be just a few winners, so I don't disagree with you. There's issues, but where there's issues, there's opportunity. And if you're able to navigate through that, you should be able to do really well. And I think Carlos is that person. That's the reason I invested. I just think Carlos is pretty unique and will be able to do the things he's talking about. But is it hard? Yeah, it's 100% hard. That's why if it works, we should all make a fortune.
And so when you say that you want to capture the millennial audience, how is that different, for example, than another company that was in a sort of high-flying space for a while, which was Vice, right? Their whole mission in life is to capture that millennial audience.
I think Vice opened up a lot of opportunities for lots of young media companies. They obviously had some culture issues, to use a euphemism, and more that I think created issues. But I do think that they pointed the way to saying that digital's not enough, and they began with digital and television. I think one of the things that Marc and I are proud that we're doing at OZY, and one of the things that Kara has done as well, is diversify even more broadly. And so I think the fact that we're not only selling TV shows to Hulu and Amazon and BBC and PBS, that we're doing festivals in New York and elsewhere around the world, and that our podcasts are entering the top 100, even the top 10 at times, I think gives us a bigger, richer opportunity than if we're a one-trick pony. I think if you're digital only, you're captive to Mark Zuckerberg, and that's not always fun.
Absolutely. I think it's really important to have a basket of offerings. I mean, we started doing events 17 years ago, Walt Mossberg and I, and then we moved into podcasts 5 years ago. And so you have to I think the problem is you've got to have very good content that people are going to hold on to. And the next stage is, though, about marketing it and getting it out there in the distribution. So you have to to jump into sort of hyperspace, you do need those distribution deals, you need the money. And you don't want to fall into this idea, say, around millennials. You don't want to be Mike, right? You don't want to be Mike.com. Right. You want to make content that young people want to watch and listen to. That said, they're not different from other people. Like the idea that they consume, that they don't like good news, they don't like good content, they don't like good events is sort of a weird idea.
How much of the business model is now dependent on what seems like a gold rush going on in the TV space, which is to say if you can sell a show to Amazon or to Hulu, I mean, there's just so much money rushing into this space. When you looked at the business and you're starting to think about the breakdown of these different segments, how much of it is around TV production?
So there's, a majority of our revenue will come from TV and live events, and that's exciting for us. And as you guys were talking about this morning, we're going to go from kind of 3 key streamers to, a year from now, there'll probably be 8 key streamers in the market, including, I'm counting Quibi and Sony and Apple and HBO Max.
And by the way, how long does this last, this gold rush last?
I think we got 2 to 3 years at least before there's a meaningful shakeout. And that means that if you're, as Kara was saying, if you're creating premium content and your shows are the kind of shows that people want to watch and stream, then there's a lot more money for you. And so we're excited about that as an opportunity for growth.
Hey, Marc, I know we've got you guest hosting next week, so we'll get to talk a lot more about your views on the market, but we did just hear from the Fed this week lowering interest rates. Is that good news or bad news as far as you're concerned?
Look, it's good news if you want to borrow money. It's the only reason the Fed's lowering rates is because the Fed's nervous about the economy. And that's not good news. I mean, you don't lower rates unless you believe there's issues out there. And I think, if you think back a year ago, everybody thought rates were moving up. And in the span of a year, they've been lowered 3 times. So the Fed's being pretty aggressive in trying to keep this economy going. I think that's fine, but I don't think that's good for us going forward. I think we'll start seeing GDP drop down over the course of next year. I don't think we get in a recession because I think the Fed's doing a pretty good job of that. But if you have 1% GDP growth, I think it was 1.9. The year before it was 3. I mean, that means we've had a 33% decline in the span of a year. That's not that great.
Unless you're somebody who's looking for distressed properties.
Right. So for me, the more issues, the better it is. But I'd like everybody else to be happy also.
Can I pivot to the NBA for a second? You own
Sure
the Milwaukee
can.
Bucks. I sort of introduced that at the beginning, but not really. Your take on China and the NBA and how this whole situation has played itself out. Has the NBA covered itself in glory here or the opposite?
I think it's been fine. You can make an argument both ways. I think for everybody, you're happy to start playing basketball again. That's really
how
it.
much is it about? We've long talked about trying to export our values, right, around the world through sport, through culture, through all these other things. And here we are now in a situation where everybody's zipping their mouth and they're not exporting the value at all. And how you think for money, by the way, that's what this is really all about. Is that the appropriate way to do it? Especially when you have, by the way, players like LeBron and Steve Kerr out on the other side of the country where you are, who are very vocal about the president in the United States and so many different political issues here. But all of a sudden, we're in another place where money's on the line and they're unwilling to speak.
Look, I think people have a right to say what they want. I think what everybody's sort of realized is there's issues out there. And until they understand them more, or they're going to try to understand them more, I think that's part of the reason why people haven't really talked a lot. I think for me, as an owner, I'd love to be able to do a little bit more.
When you say do a little more?
No, I mean, I think you want to try to see and try to understand all the issues. I don't know everything that's been going on out there, and I should. But at least for me right now, I think the NBA has actually handled it pretty well. And we'll see what ends up happening with them going forward with China.
You're going to be joining us
Yes.
in a week, so we can continue this part of the conversation.
I look forward to it.
I know this is the part you're really not looking forward to.
No, I live for this.
But, Marc, thank you. Carlos,
Always,
thank you.
Always good to be here.
Absolutely.
Thank you, guys.